Hi guys, my name is Vivi, and for my paper I wrote about my Vietnamese culture. I started off with my paper talking about how the process of immigration has changed over time. Back in the early 18th and 19th centuries, Americans actually encouraged for free and open immigration. But as time progressed, the process did become more difficult. Laws such as the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 and the Immigration Act of 1924 came into place, and since then it's been pretty difficult. The Immigration Act has been revised over time. The recent revision that I found was back in 1990. Within this revision, they added more immigrant visas, but the immigrant visas were now divided into three categories: family-sponsored, employment-based, and diversity immigrants. The diversity immigrants means these immigrants were selected by a lottery system from countries with low immigration rates. So for my paper, I decided to interview my mom. Her and her 6 siblings immigrated from Vietnam to America back in 1993. So it was her and her 6 siblings. In Vietnam, they grew up without any parents. Their mom passed away from cancer at a really young age, so that left them and her siblings to fend for themselves because they didn't have a father figure in their life as well. So they grew up in a city called Hue in South Vietnam. Once my mom's mom passed away, they were all forced to drop out of school, so my mom's education level is not even like an elementary level. She had to drop out, I think, back in 2nd grade. And she was the middle child, so there were younger kids who had to drop out as well. And then their older sister kind of took over as the mother figure, so she stayed home and took care of her kid at the time and was in control of the finances, while my mom and her other siblings had to go out and find on and end jobs. My mom said that they did random jobs such as like house cleaning, sewing, and cooking in order to make ends meet. In addition to this, they also grew up during the Vietnamese War. So in combination with their financial and food insecurity, they were also now dealing with the traumas of war, being terrified like every single day, and then also having to grieve losing their parent at such a young age. So my mom described coming to America, hoping that it would end all of their worries and they would have a fresh start and have more opportunities than they would in Vietnam. Let's see. So they started their process in 1981. They were being family sponsored. So family sponsored means that they either have a spouse, a minor child, or a parent of a US citizen. Their trip started in the Philippines, and it wasn't a quick trip. They were there for about a year, and there my second oldest brother was born, so he was born in the Philippines. So after their time in the Philippines, they then moved to New York City. But it wasn't a permanent move, it was just to get all their paperwork done. So between traveling from Hue to the Philippines to New York City with her two new kids and all of her siblings and their spouses, my mom described coming to New York City as a sense of calmness that she didn't feel for some time, even though it was definitely a scary time. So after spending some time in New York City to do their paperwork, they then made a permanent move to a city called Utica, New York. Utica, New York was actually a great starting point for my mom's family. They had a very diverse population there, as well as they had their own refugee center. The refugee center was a great place because they offer, just in the refugee center alone, they have 15 plus languages spoken among their staff. They also have a lot of other courses that help immigrants and refugees. They have adult learning classes. They have employment and workforce development programs and resources to gain permanent citizenship. They also help you access all of your necessities, such as applying for any social services and health access programs within the area as well. So coming to America was their dream, but they still faced struggles while adapting to this big change. Moving to a new country, they didn't know the language, they didn't know how the culture was here, they didn't even know like any of the surrounding areas. But with the refugee center, they were able to obtain a lot of courses during that time. My mom and her siblings took, I think it's called English as a Second Language course, where they were able to be taught more English. They also were provided with housing programs such as Section 8 to help pay for housing. By then, they were able to secure a 3-bedroom apartment. But this 3-bedroom apartment had to fit my mom, her 6 siblings, their spouses, and also all of their new kids that were added into the mix as well. But luckily for them, Utica actually has a very dense population of Vietnamese people. So between the combination of the refugee center where they gained all of their resources, they also started building relationships with other Vietnamese people in the area. And with Vietnamese people, one of our most popular businesses is like nail salons. So my mom and her siblings were able to gain the skills of doing nails and continued growing from there. Now with that, my mom's siblings also own nail salons. They own their own houses, all because they were able to just gain that one skill. Despite their positive improvements, my mom and her family also faced discrimination. My mom and her siblings have a very thick accent. Even though they can speak English, they still have a thick Asian accent. So as soon as they speak English, I think it's easy to look down upon them that they don't know, but the accent doesn't typically mean that. And also in the beginning stages, my mom also qualified for and accepted social services, any social services she was able to qualify for, which includes SNAP, HEAP, Section 8. And she said as soon as she pulled out her SNAP card, being an immigrant with speaking English with an accent, she would get just a bunch of stares. So that was difficult as well. An interesting fact I was able to find was that even though Utica is very diverse, only 69% of the Utica residents believe immigration is actually good for the area. Now, 69% is a relatively high number, but that still leaves 31% of the population against immigration. I believe that a lot of what I grew up with is going to help me become a better social worker. I was able to see the struggles that my mom and her siblings faced just by moving to a new country to gain better opportunities for themselves and their family, and to set up a better ground system so that me and my siblings and all of my cousins are able to live a life where we can continue to thrive. And just by doing that, they still are discriminated against. We're currently living in a time now where immigration is looked down on. ICE is completely just going through and doing a lot. One of the researchers I was able to find that within these detention centers that ICE are bringing immigrants into, they're being isolated, they aren't having access to any counsel, and their families aren't even able to visit them. They're also put into isolation, solitary confinement actually. About 300 immigrants are held in solitary confinement on a regular day. So they have inadequate access to food, recreational activities are scarce, and lockdown can last for over 16 hours a day. Now, this can cause severe harm in one's mental health. But on top of that, with immigrants, sometimes they don't know all of their access to resources. So if there's harm to mental health or harm to their physical health, they might not know where to go next. So I feel like with all of my background that I have growing up, it would definitely help me become a better social worker. I can empathize more. I can have my own experiences to share as well to make clients feel as if they're not going through alone in this. Immigrants have been reporting that they feel increased anxiety, increased stress, and higher symptoms of depression with immigration currently, the process. The first few years of immigration can definitely be difficult. I believe that we could add more refugee centers, such as the one that was in Utica, that can continue helping a lot of immigrants. By having a dedicated refugee center or a center just for immigrants to go to, they will not feel discriminated against while being there, because there's others who are there just like them to get access to the help and gain all the resources that they are entitled to as well. And I think that centers that are aimed at helping immigrants also help them connect to other members in the community and also feel like their community is there to help them as well. That way they don't feel lonely, they don't feel isolated, and they feel that the community that they are going to be living in and making a permanent home will continue to help them. All right, that's it for my paper. Thank you. Bye.